For lesson 2, I wanted to use the iPad as in my classroom as well, and I wanted to use it in kind of a unique way, and I wanted to utilize some of the math-specific apps that I was researching. And I also wanted to have the students engaged in using technology in my classroom, but this is much more of a teacher-centered with the iPad than the students using the iPad in this lesson. But I wanted the kids to still be able to use technology, so I had them using some texting in class. So I wanted to engage them and get immediate feedback from them. So in this lesson, I briefly demonstrated the concepts of factoring trinomials with my students using the TriTutor app, and I projected it onto the front of the screen. There was a tutorial in the app itself, and there was also multiple examples of exactly what the students need to do in order to complete the process. So we reviewed with the whole class, and then I provided students with some questions on a website called polleverywhere.com, and where students could submit answers to me by texting or typing them into a laptop, and the results were sent directly to my iPad so I could see exactly where the students were at, and I could adjust my instruction accordingly. So the technology used in this was an iPad. Doesn't necessarily have to be an iPad 2 for this assignment. I needed an iPad to VGA adapter in order to get it to project up onto the screen, so it was about a $30 cable, and unfortunately this cable is about a foot long, so you can't really move very much with the iPad if it's projected onto the screen. There are other options available, but they cost a great deal more, like about $150 for Apple TV to project it throughout wirelessly. The Trinomial Tutor app was free. polleverywhere.com, I got a free account for me set up. The student cell phones or laptops were available, and the school Wi-Fi in the classroom was needed. The teacher skills being used is the ability to use and download the TriTutor app, the ability to input questions into polleverywhere.com, which is just writing questions into any kind of program, utilizing screenshots to limit students viewing others' responses before they make their own vote. So what I did was I projected the polleverywhere.com website onto the screen with the question needed, and then I took a screenshot of the question and the numbers that the students needed to text to so that the students saw the screenshot, but during this time the students were texting in and I could see a live view of how the students were doing and what answers they were getting. And then when everyone had finished voting, I showed the students the student responses so that they could get an idea of if they had the right answer or not. And the skills to manage the texting etiquette in your classroom, you have to have a very good relationship with your kids and trust your kids in order to allow them to text in class, especially just for school purposes and not for other purposes during class. Student skills needed is they needed the content knowledge to participate in the voting and the discussion, and they also needed the ability to text or vote from a laptop, which I didn't find to be a problem. I think all my students had that knowledge. The project procedures is to connect my iPad to the projector, demonstrate the tutorial video app with the students, utilize vast resources of practice problems with students. So there was tons of problems that I could go through over and over again with the students. I think the amount of time it would have taken me to create all of those problems would have really just been hours just to create as many as that I could use in a classroom. And present polleverywhere.com questions to the class so that they had the questions that they needed to answer. And then I took a screenshot of the page for the numbers for them to text to, then display the screenshot while the students were voting, and then once they were finished voting, remove the screenshot and show the actual live site. And then my job was to adjust my instruction and to pinpoint exactly where they were having trouble and what needed to happen for them to be able to master the topic. My advantages were the students were engaged the whole time. The ability to use cell phones in itself was just amazing to them. Step-by-step process described to the students in detail through the tutorial was really helpful for some of the more linear students. They really wanted to see exactly what happened first and next, and the video goes through it very well. The TriTutor app has limitless examples of problems if necessary, so I could continue to just put up another problem if students were having trouble. The teacher can get immediate feedback for the entire class, which was really great to be able to see, okay, 50% of my students really understand what's going on, but there's this other 50% who have no clue. Adjustments can be made during the lesson so that every student gets the advantage of knowing the material. The disadvantage, it requires a projector cable to be used, so it doesn't require that purchase and an iPad. The texting is anonymous, so the whole class is represented. I couldn't tell that, Susie didn't understand something, but Billy did. I could tell, 83% of the class got this right. So there are advantages and disadvantages to that. There's also open-ended questions with polleverywhere.com, so students could text anything they really wanted to. And when I'd done this process before, when I just showed the answers onto the screen, I would get students texting in, "Hello, Miss Slosser, how are you doing?" and little things like that. But when I eliminated them being able to see the responses until the very end, I didn't have that trouble. And that's what the iPad allowed me to do. Teachers are unsure which students are falling behind if it's anonymous. The polleverywhere.com is unfriendly with math symbols. I found that if I wanted to use x squared, I had to use the little caret symbol and then the 2, which was a little time consuming, but the students were able to follow along pretty well. The best practices for this assignment was that materials presented in multiple modes, the class discussion and video with animation, so they got to hear it from me, they got to hear it from the video itself, and they got to hear it from their peers when we discussed it. The formative assessment guides my instruction so that I could immediately understand, okay, 50% of my kids don't understand this, so I needed to realize what I needed to reteach, and so that I could better help those students. And since posting is anonymous, even the quietest student in my classroom felt comfortable to participate. I didn't have to pull anything out of anyone. It was their chance to make their opinion or voice their opinion without actually having to be a target from their peers. So the anonymous feature was good in that way. Transferring, I know the TriTutor app will probably only be applicable to a math class, but it's available to download on an iPhone and iPod for free, so the students could use it at home and could help them there. Polleverywhere.com has a lot of uses outside of the classroom or outside of a math classroom. It could be used anywhere in any school where cell phones are permitted, which I did have to get approval to use cell phones in my classroom before I did the assignment, so many teachers might want to do that first. The immediate responses from every student in the classroom sent directly to my iPad was incredibly convenient. I didn't necessarily have to go into each individual student and check their work. I could just look on my screen and say, okay, they understand it, they don't, they understand it. So it was much faster than traditional. In conclusion, using a single iPad in the classroom can engage students in a variety of ways. They could engage them by actually physically holding the device and working with it, and it could also engage them by seeing the device projected onto a screen, or just engage them in their responses being shown. The apps are available to do things that other laptops can't, so I don't think this TriTutor app was available on a laptop. It was something that only an iPad would be useful for. The iPad made making videos and screencasting much easier and faster to do. The rendering of the videos was quick and easy. Very little prior knowledge is needed for an effective, engaging lesson. Picking up the iPad for 1 week and I could be able to do all of these things. It was very intuitive and very easy to use, much like all other Apple products. Differentiation is possible with the iPad, which is really good in a classroom, and I can tailor lessons to meet specific needs. So I think using the iPad in my classroom was a good success, and I hope to have an iPad to use in my classroom next year as well.